Good morning, my name is Peter Savage and I'm here just to do some very basic business skills and trying to give you 5 fundamental building blocks to avoid inevitable failure. And failure will happen. Glasgow Rangers was always going to fail eventually because they got their fundamentals of business wrong. Their costs, their wages exceeded their income, so it was going to happen. When you're going into business, you've got to understand that 70% of all businesses fail in their first 3 years. So once you get past the 3 years, you've obviously made a success of something. So you've just got to be aware that starting out, it's all very important. The UK economy is not made of massive companies. It's made of small businesses. 70% of all businesses employ less than 3 people. So the UK economy, and also 90% of all businesses start with under £10,000 worth of capital. So we are an economy of what is known as SMEs. We are all small businesses employing 1, 2 or 3 people. The first fundamental block that we talk about is business planning. If you fail to plan, you will fail. What you need to do at the start when you're thinking about going out into business is find a way of establishing a blueprint, something that you know is going to work, trying to work out exactly how the business is going to go forward, where your income's going to come from, where your costs and who are your costs. The analogy of builders building houses, you know, they always build their houses via architects' plans because they are very good at laying bricks or putting roofs on houses, but they don't know exactly how to draw it to the technical spec. So always make a plan, always try and put something down on paper before you start out or going into business. Business plans don't have to be expensive. Everyone thinks, well, if I go to accounts it's going to cost me thousands of pounds. It won't. It will cost you £400 or £500 if you go to the right sort of accountant. And you don't have to go over the top. It doesn't have to be 50 pages long with analysis of the industry, etc., etc. It has to be basic. A basic profit and loss and a cash flow. Does your business work? Does your income actually exceed your costs? What are your costs? What is your income? Does it work? Test it, okay? Does it work? Does it make a profit at the end? That's the fundamental. What happens if, for example, if you're in a business and you've got a whole load of clients that you want to take with you, will all those clients actually leave the company that you're working with and move with you? Will they all come? What happens if only half of them come? So look at a situation where if you halved your income, do you still make a profit? What about your costs, okay? Always look as though you've got to have a contingency built into your plan. And the reason I say this is because most people get their £10,000 worth of investment capital out of family and friends. They go along and what happens is we call them family, friends and fools, because family and friends rarely ask for a proper business plan or business proposal. They'll just lend you the money. So what we try and do is try and advise people not to make fools out of your family and friends, because at least if you go with a plan, you can actually say to them, this is what I think is going to happen, this is how you're going to get your money back. If it fails, then at least they've had a chance of looking at it, but don't take advantage of your friends and family. And finally, most people go to family and friends because they've first been to the bank without a business plan, and 90% of all people who go to the bank and apply for a loan in business without a business plan get turned down. So you've got to plan to get business loans and stuff like this. It's a bit of a strange analogy, but freelancers drink more coffee. The reason I'm talking about this is the fact that employing people is expensive, okay? So as I said at the start, businesses are small, and if you suddenly take on 1, 2 or 3 staff, it's expensive not only from the fact that you're paying tax, national insurance, their holiday time, it's expensive in your time managing those people. So always think, and also with freelancers they're far more flexible, so you can be busy for a certain amount of time, then you needn't use them, so you can actually get yourself into a very flexible business situation. So always think about freelancers in that sense. And the costs. Freelancers will drink far more coffee than you think. So when you are actually going, they will, well, there we are. And the analogy that I use all the time is printing costs. You buy a £100 printer and you're paying £500 a month in printing costs for getting cartridges. Things like that always build up. So always in your plans and whatever, have a contingency, have money for a rainy day. I'm in the lending business and I lend in business assets, but I am still a great believer that cash is still king. At the end of the day, if you've got cash, you don't have to worry about overdrafts, credit facilities or whatever. So make sure that you're always working out how you're going to get your money in. In 2008, 4,000 small businesses closed because of late payments from their customers. People don't like to chase money, so you've got to be very prepared. If you're going to invoice, even at freelancers, we had a guy last week who came in at Manchester, and he was saying, well, it's great, you're completely right, I invoiced my first job and the people didn't pay me for 6 months. You know, these sort of things happen, so you've got to build into your factor that you've got to chase your money and to have a cash contingency. Always have something held back for the rainy day, and always establish your credit facilities right at the start. So what I mean by that is, if you go to the bank and you've been working as your freelancer and you've billed for £6,000 to this company, they're not paying you, then you run off to the bank and go, can I have an overdraft because I'm owed £6,000? You won't get that overdraft. But if you go at the start and say, look, can I have £3,000 or £4,000 just in case something's going to happen, with an established business plan, give it to them, the chances are the bank will actually lend you that and give you your facility. So always try and get everything arranged in advance so that when you don't get paid for your job, you can move into your overdraft, wait for the money to come in. Overtrading. Now, it's surprising, but actually being very, very busy can kill your business. So if you don't have the right facilities in place for you, you can actually get to the stage where you're doing so much work, you're employing freelancers, which is great, but freelancers actually want to get paid at the end of the month. So you've got your mates who are the freelancers wants to be paid, and the big companies that you're billing aren't paying you for 60 days, and suddenly you run out of money. We've got an OB company at the moment who have basically got loads and loads of business coming in. It's a £1 million contract every time to build a truck. All the suppliers want to be paid in advance, all their staff want to be paid in advance, so they've got so much work on, but they can't get the money in. So you've got to be aware that success can actually be as much of a problem as actually not being successful. Overdraft and term loan. When you're establishing your credit facilities, try and use them properly, as in use your overdrafts or your short-term loan facilities for trading, so to counteract overtrading or short payments. But if you're going to borrow money for assets that you're going to use over time, establish them on a term situation so that you can pay for them over a period of time. What happens to a lot of people is that they will get to overdraft, run into hard call, and overdrafts can immediately be taken away by the bank at any time. And a lot of the problems in 2008 was the fact that banks actually withdrew a load of overdraft facilities, and small businesses got very, very cash flowed. So try and establish more than one way of having credit facilities, and make sure that term loans, things like leasing and whatever, they can't be withdrawn on demand. So you therefore got your money out on a fixed period, and that's very good for planning as well. You'll know what will be going out every month on a monthly basis. Another word of advice on this is, when you are looking at credit facilities and whatever, and you are borrowing money, nowadays, in today's world, whatever the government says and however the banks say it, you'll probably have to guarantee it. So what we say about guarantees is, always take advice, because people don't actually understand the relevance of guarantees, and always talk to your partner and tell them you are taking out a guarantee. The number of people I know that will actually not tell their living partner that they're borrowing money or guaranteeing things, and when it all goes wrong, half of the property, half of whatever, can be taken back by the people that have taken those guarantees. So always be aware that you should tell your partner. And with banks, it's always, banks and all lending facilities, it's always best to tell them exactly if there's going to be a problem. Now, we always know in the production business that January and February is always a problem time. You've either been shooting through the summer, stuff is either on hire or whatever through up to Christmas, and then suddenly business goes completely quiet for January and February. Now, we have a situation where as long as our people have phoned us up in advance and told us that they're actually going to struggle in January and February, we don't mind them picking up in the summer. But I know that most banks and whatever take it very, very badly if you don't give them forewarning on the fact that you might actually not be paying a payment. And just so that you know also, is there is a whole wealth of credit information that is stored by the credit agencies. And everyone talks about credit agencies for the government and whether we're going to get our AAA rating or whatever. But in fact, every person has an Experian or whatever credit rating number on, and all your mobile phones, your gas payments and everything all get recorded to your name. So you've got to be very aware that if you are missing payments and whatever, it will record and it will affect that credit rating. And that will affect your ability to get any of the things I've mentioned. Eggs in one basket. The 80-20 rule, okay? My theory is don't put your eggs in one basket, okay? 80-20 rule is that 80% of your business will come from your top 20% clients, which is great. So you work on your top 20% of your clients and you'll get most of your business out of them. But there is within that a very big weakness, because what happens if that client, or you become over dependent on the client? I'll give you two examples. We owned a small shareholding in a children's TV company. They were making stuff for Channel 4. Channel 4 about 10 years ago undertook a review and cancelled the whole commissioning on children's TV programmes. That wiped them out completely. They then had no income at all. The second one, which is a worse one I think, was a post-production company in London that we dealt with a couple of years ago. And they suddenly got very busy from one client. This client kept on billing them, paying top rates and wanting all their rooms. And they basically got to the stage where they were just full completely from this one client. 100, 200, 300, 400,000 pounds a month. The client was paying it on the drip. And yes, the client went bust in 2008 when everyone sort of went bust. That company was out of business in 4 days. So eggs in one basket is a very, very important thing. We as a company, our banks covenant us on the fact that we can't actually put all our business in one basket. So they are already telling us that we've got to spread our risk. So it's a very important factor. And I've been to that. What happens if the BBC changes their mind, shuts something down? Then a lot of companies, just because they're BBC reliant, will go out of business. More the same. Last one. So all the same as a sporting analogy. It is on the fact, and it comes from tennis, where most tennis players that lose their matches will change their tactics halfway through the match. They'll be winning quite happily, so they'll be doing baseline or they'll be doing serve and volley or whatever, but then statistically, if they lose from a winning position, it's because they have changed what they're doing. And it's exactly the same in business. You can be a great creative or whatever. You can set up your little boutique business and you can be going places and you get to the stage where you're employing people and it's all going great. And then everyone decides they want to take on the world. They suddenly want to go into hire, or they suddenly want to do something else. Why do that? Always do more of the same, because you are good at that, and that is how you make your money. We had a hire company came to us last week. They do wet hire, small cameras out into small production companies, and they said, Olympics are coming, I want to invest £500,000 to £1 million in dry hire camera channels to outside broadcasters. And we go, whoa, why do you want to do that? So, well, it's going to be really busy. Well, busy for how long? How do you know it? How many clients do you have? And we went through all these things, and they went, yeah, it's maybe not that easy. What happens in next year? So you've just got to think that sometimes doing the boring thing and doing more, 20% more of what you're good at, is better than trying to change your whole business plan. Oops, sorry, a bit heavy-handed on that. Be prepared to take on business skills, and certain business skills are not transferable. Be prepared, once you are that creative and you've got busy, to then take on accountants or whatever, because the other big failing we see in businesses is the fact that creatives suddenly decide that they're no longer creative, that they actually want to look at Excel spreadsheets all day and become businessmen per se and accountants. It doesn't work. Creatives are very good at being creative, and I've rarely ever met a creative who is a good accountant. It just doesn't go with the flow. So in that case, when you are busy and you're actually making money, take on an accountant. So I'm saying be prepared to take on business skills, be prepared to take on accountants short term. You don't have to bring in a managing director, but look at the strengths, your key strengths of why you're making money, and if that is because you are the creative, don't change what you're doing. So, the inevitable need not happen if you plan it. Business is very simple. It only becomes difficult when you step outside certain parameters. And that's it. Any questions? Anything? Funding, whatever? Budget?
Are you familiar with the concept of crowdfunding?
I do. I think, well, so to give a bit of background, because how many people here know what crowdfunding is? Oh, lots of you. Oh, informed. Bristol is obviously more informed than the rest of the regions on crowdfunding. Okay. Crowdfunding is where you put yourself basically on a internet site or whatever with an idea, and lots of people will come in and put £1, £10, £15, £20 or whatever to fund you up to where you want to go. There's one important thing about crowdfunding, and it goes back to the 90% of all people fail on crowdfunding if they don't have a plan. So lots of people put their ideas up there and go, I've got this great idea, but they don't actually put a plan behind it. So the crowdfunders I've spoken to and the various internet-y type similar crowdfunders, they all want a business plan with the crowdfunding. So it's great having your idea, but make sure you know exactly how much money you're going to spend. We had a guy, we were at a crowdfunding consortium, we go, how much do you want? He said, I want somewhere between 50,000 and 250,000. And you could see all the people just go boom, like that, because he hadn't thought out what he wanted. So crowdfunding, I think, is good. It used to be illegal over here, but it's now, there's about 2 or 3 websites that do it, and they are successful. And you look on them and people are getting funding from it. But there's a whole range of other funders in the market. If you're doing if you're doing some form of social stuff, there's a lot of social enterprise funding available in the market. There's lots of other business angel type things available in the market, not actually the angels, because they're, but still, if you're looking at TV, the most difficult area to raise funds is naught to £50,000, and then £50,000 to £1 million. And it's actually quite strange that if you actually want to go over £1 million, it's easier to raise more than £1 million than it is to raise £5,000 or £10,000. So, but I think it's a good idea.
You said that there is a lot of social enterprise funding in the market. Where is it?
Where? If you send me the stuff, I'll send you some links to the social enterprise funding thing, because they were at this finance consortium thing as well, and they were going, we've got lots of money available, so I'd love to know, I'll give you the names of them, go to them and see whether it's actually available, because if it isn't, they're standing up and preaching to people saying it's available when it's not. So
why was the crowdfunding illegal and now it's not? What happened there? Why
it's Financial Services Authority, the FSA, because you couldn't guarantee what return. So if you actually go and invest in a company, you're normally given a prospectus which basically says, you know, all the liabilities are taken away, you know exactly what you're doing, you're an informed borrower or whatever. But so crowdfunding, you just basically put your pound in and they weren't guaranteeing to give you anything back. So they classed it as illegal, but it took off in the States, and now, as I said, 2 or 3 of the crowdfunders have got around the FSA rulings and made it legal over here. So it is still, it's illegal on the investment side, if you see what I mean. There was no investor protection.
Yes, I've heard of places online like Kickstarter and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. Those are similar. Yeah, same sort of things. I've got a list. Give me a card and I'll send it. In fact, TV Bay article I do in TV Bay next month in TV Bay. It's not a sell for TV Bay, but it's on crowdfunding, so I'll put some names in on that. Anything else? No. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, thank you very much.